After lunch today, I was talking with Scott about the goat management on this particular piece of property. And so like I've shared with you in the past, I'm learning the animal parts. My strengths is marketing, design, but when it comes to the practical implementation of your animals, I'm learning just like many of you guys are learning. And so let's learn together. So Scott was telling me about how to manage these woods. First off, I ran the numbers and there aren't enough calories in this woods to do very many animals. So you can have acres, but you may not have the food calories in the browse in order to serve the animals. Now, the next door property, which is not mine, it has enough browse, but once that browse is gone, it doesn't have the infrastructure and trees to stay going. So in order to manage these woods, by the way, I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. In order to manage these woods, we're gonna do what the typical wildlife or forest management people do, is that we're gonna basically slash the land to open it up for more light. That's what we did with the trails. And then ultimately get grass growing in here. So I'm gonna try to get you a good example here. Naturally, when we open the trails up with the forest mulcher, you can see there's more green browse on the ground. In the woods, we have the green browse, but it's more vertical. The goats can only reach so high. So if we're just opening these woods up to get a kind of a grassland savanna, I know how to do that. But if we're purposefully adding pressure to it, which is the animals, then there's other factors we need to consider. So let me give you an example of what's starting up here. You can see grasses coming up on their own. And if we put too much goat pressure in here, then we'll lose that grass coming back. You can see in the woods, there's a lot of thin trees and sticks. That actually creates shade. And so what we can do is allow the goats to come through here a little bit harsh. So we're gonna run off of these main lines, let the goats browse in there a little bit harsh and kill off some of the small trees. They're not gonna hurt these big trees, but they're gonna kill off these small trees. And if we concentrate them in areas where we get good sun exposure, then we're gonna have fewer small trees, which is what we have over here on the trails where the large trees were eliminated. And we're gonna have more small, short browse. But what's highest value though, is to start getting some grass to grow into those trees. So we're gonna force a disturbance by moving the goats through the woodland and all the way down through the property at the appropriate stocking levels. And then from there, we're gonna come in behind them and make the areas exclusive. So we're not gonna allow any animals in them and put in our grasses. And so I'm gonna get a natural blend. You can see some grasses coming up here. I'm gonna get a natural seed blend for South Central Virginia. And so again, that's where the master naturalist comes in. I can go work with the people to get the right grass blend, but we can't run those animals on somebody else's land. So I've got to make my land more appropriate for the amount of calories that we need. Now, when we're discussing stocking levels, I will not be able to fully stock this piece of property until I've ran through a few goats in order to kind of get an idea of what's going on. So those original set of goats are going to intensely browse these clusters of trees that have been left behind, that have trails going around them, in order to bring down the brush, open up the woods for airflow, open up the woods for sunlight, in order for us to get grass growing. Now, as they progress in the season and the sun is higher or lower in the sky, we'll concentrate them on different areas. But we want the goats to leave that area before it's optimal for the grass growth. So they're gonna come through an area, they're gonna strip all the small trees down, then I'll come in behind them and slash. So that means I might be cutting out those trees and laying them on the ground. I might cut out those trees and use them for make biochar or something. But ultimately what we'll leave behind is what could be timber worthy. So it'll be more spread out like this than it would be like the more mature woods that are behind me. So again, I'm using the habitat management that I already know, adding the appropriate knowledge necessary for stocking of animals, and then ultimately improving the habitat of the forest. We're going to move this forest towards a Virginia grassland savanna or a silvopasture setup where the animals can graze underneath. Now that might mean I'll end up with more grass in the future. We may have to go from goats to sheep. That's fine. But the key to understand here is that this is a progression that doesn't require herbicides. It doesn't require additional equipment. It actually improves the quality of the forest land. It reintroduces grass that's already here, except we're going to get the seeds and spread it out. And then we're going to favor our native plants because they are better adapted for our climate, for the wind, for the rain. And you can already see the deer browsing here, by the way. And so we're also going to favor our turkeys, our deer, and our other animals that are local to this area. Now, what does that mean from my management standpoint or from my work standpoint? It means that we're going to have an unlimited supply of firewood because all these big scraps and stuff will come out. And as the goats come through here, they may get followed by pigs to turn things up before we put seed down. And then ultimately, we're going to open up the airflow. We're going to open up the overall environment. Now, will all the woods end up like this? Probably not. This is going to be probably an herb garden space, some basic nursery items, or a simple area where the goats come through periodically. But it will definitely open the woods up so that you can walk through it without all the hassle and struggle we had before. So again, we're running goats because it's not a mature forest. It is a ragamuffin, overgrown mess with a lot of briars and a lot of thorns. But we're gonna run those goats heavy to get the first batches of goats as many calories as possible because we're not confident that there's gonna be enough browse for a whole season. So there are other properties involved in this, and so we can move them to another property where they can be fed more regularly or that there's better grass habitat for them. Now, goats don't typically only eat grass. They're gonna love these woods, but we have to get that regrowth. We have to get those horizontal branches growing, which requires light to come in. You can see how the oak trees are starting to grow laterally because they have light on their trunks. And in order to get the light in, we need to open the woods up quite a bit. Now again, with the natural building classes in our region, with the ideas for shelters and different things that we want to do here, we're going to leave behind all the most desirable trees, and we're going to work on getting all this tiny, thin stuff out. If the goats don't eat it or knock it down, then it will stay up. So we're not putting a lot of effort in taking down trees. But ultimately, we're going to favor the native trees, the higher quality trees, the straight trees, take everything else out, and not necessarily burn it, because we're going to have some hugelkultur here. We're going to have some brush dams necessary for erosion areas. I have found a few areas that erode. We're going to be building off of our trails, so there could be whole sections of the woods that we don't touch at all, because we're going to go 100 foot off of every trail from either side, and that's where we're running the animals. And then that way, you know, if the two trails are 300 feet apart, there'll be a section in the middle that doesn't ever get touched. And so we'll be able to see the difference between goat pressure and no goat pressure, but our forest recovery time will be more consistent because of the way we're moving animals through. So if you're interested in the maps that we put together, if you're interested in other details about how you might run a paddock system or a cell system, you know, mention in the comments below. We could do a PDF file for you. But again, I was chatting with Scott. I'm not confident we're going to have the calories necessary to get a full load of goats on here. So the land might be able to take a certain number of goats, but you have to be able to consistently feed those goats over the course of the year if all they're going to have is browse. So we're going to start with a smaller number of animals. We're going to keep them on pressure in smaller sections of the woodland to see how much they can clear, how fast they can clear, monitor their food, make it easier to supplement their food if we have to. But ultimately, get the trees and woods thinned out so that we're in a position where we can start getting the grass, where we can start getting higher quality herbaceous plants, things that require more sunlight on the ground itself to warm it up. and then leave behind desirable trees that maybe 20 years from now, maybe 50 years from now will be nice trees, but ultimately the land will be managed by the goats, and the goats will be making the land more valuable from a holistic standpoint, rather than spraying and praying or even running even more forest mulching back here. Now it's tempting to just forest mulch it and then come in and just plant what we need to plant, but it's more valuable to take the calories in the woods and turn them into meat, and then leverage the benefit of the meat or the goatness, you know, what goats like to do, and let them dominate this area. Let them do what goats do and eat all these browse and eat all the small plants until we can get it under management, and another crop that comes back faster, another crop that has more valuable calories and minerals and nutrients, another crop that better supports the needs of the animals over land. So this area's got a little bit of oak in it. That area over there's got a lot of pine. Up there's a lot of pine. It's not suitable for a large herd of goats to be moving through here. So we're gonna move a smaller herd. We're gonna determine how fast everything recovers, and then we'll scale up from there. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you like to follow this project, and many of the projects that we do like this, because it helps you get your homestead up faster, then be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to visit our website and join our newsletter at www.prosperityhomestead.org. And most importantly, ask those pressing questions, because I'm asking questions and I'm sharing the answers with you, but I'm investing my time, my money, my resources, and making sure I do this the right way. I want to make sure the animals are taken care of. I want to make sure the animals are the highest value product, and that their life as a goat, as a pig, as anything that's living out here is the very best it can be. Only that they have one bad day, which is processing day. But ultimately, the rest of their life is full of abundance. All that we would wish as humans to have and more, because we're helping them manage the forest. We're protecting them from predators. We're ultimately doing habitat management with livestock. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next podcast.